There's a kind of casual cruelty that is increasingly celebrated. Why do people get so animated about politics or about anything? Because I think when you take that vantage point, you remember that all we are and all that we strive for and expend our nerves worrying about day after day, all is going to revert to dust in what is in the sort of timescale of the cosmos, not even the blink of an eye. Metaphysical questions are no longer part of our public discourse. And I think that accounts for some of the incoherence of our public sphere. The preservation of lies requires a great deal of force. I think there are many forces in the modern world that conspire to cut us off from the divine. But moments when I basically felt as if my mind was cracked open and some insight poured into it. And it's in that silence, in that abyss, that I think real insight comes. You could be wrongfully sentenced to prison and yet in your heart still be free because you live with a clear conscience. I think we have a very disordered relationship with our own mortality. We have hidden it from ourselves so thoroughly. And in all these ways, we've used medical and social technologies to conceal the unpleasant fact of mortality. And as a consequence, I don't think we're able to give life its proper due. One of those is experiences of sublime beauty. And I think a lot of people will say that it's the shock of extraordinary beauty seems to bring them in connection with something beyond the mundane day-to-day. This world is a kind of exile from our true homes, that this is not our final destiny or sort of the final fate of our souls. And it focuses us to think about the lasting things. If you're not thinking about death, I don't think that you're thinking very much about future life or about the duties that you may bear to posterity or what you're leaving behind.
They stop being willing to get married. They stop being willing to have children. They stop being willing to start companies, to put themselves out to do great things.
I'm not going to provide any signposts, any cultural scripts, any guardrails. You need to be self-making. You need to invent for yourself the meaning of life. Our ignorance is always, by definition, infinite. Our knowledge always finite. So we should be humble in that sense. And I think not too dogmatic in our approach to things. And we can actually tell there's certain ways of living that produce greater happiness than others. And I don't mean happiness as a passing aesthetic sense of pleasure, a kind of lasting happiness. And there's certain ways of living that do not conduce to happiness.
Carl Jung would say the concept of myth and spirit are essential to the human experience. And it seems like Jordan Peterson and others have really tapped into that felt need amongst the populace where people have a sense that there's something more that needs to be talked about that we're not allowed to talk about in the public square.
I think that a huge portion of the population actually is having these kind of numinous experiences that psychotherapists would say are indicative of a psychopathology of schizophrenia or something, so we don't talk about them. But maybe half of us have had these, and yet we don't talk about it. So when you go to work and you talk with your friends and you pretend that you care about the marginal tax rate or whatever, but you're actually having these really significant kind of numinous experiences over here, this leads to a sort of fractured state. At a certain point, whether or not you're right doesn't matter nearly so much as whether you're good. I think you should keep humanity human. And COVID to me was just such a stark example of the people who want to put masks to cover our faces and inject us with strange mRNA vaccines and shut down funerals, the observation of funeral rites and all of this. This seems like the side that is not human. And I would overhear people in cafes boasting about how they ended friendships because so-and-so was dirty and unvaccinated in like wealthy, affluent parts of Calgary. How do we maintain our bearings? How do we maintain in us a certain kind of simplicity and openness and goodness, even in times where things seem increasingly unmoored?
We want to protect what we love. We have a sense of what we know we love and what we know we want to protect, even if we can't articulate it.